Hey everybody, it's Bill from Minding Your Mental Health, and today I'd like to discuss something that's been bothersome for me when I've had depression in the worst times. It's when you get intrusive thoughts. Now, intrusive thoughts are basically any thought that comes into your mind that you don't like or you don't want. It's any unwanted thought. When you have unwanted thoughts, you think you might be going crazy, or you think you might have to act on these thoughts. Now, the thoughts can be anything. They can be violent, they can be sexual in nature, they can be anything in your mind that is unwanted that causes you distress. Intrusive thoughts happen to everyone. It's not just people that have obsessive compulsive disorder that have these thoughts. And you don't have to have obsessive compulsive disorder to have intrusive thoughts. So with my experience, it happened when I was on a certain medication. This medication was for depression. It was an SSRI. With this particular medication, what it did is it made me want to hurt people. It made me want to violently hurt people, and I would actually get anxious because I knew in my mind that I shouldn't hurt people, but I was wondering why these thoughts were coming into my head. At the time, I was afraid to use knives because I figured the opportunity would be there to act on these thoughts. That's the key though, acting on the thoughts. I mean, everybody gets intrusive thoughts, regardless of how disturbing they might be. They're only going to cause trouble if you act on them. Having intrusive thoughts isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's normal, as distressing as they might be. At the time, I had a girlfriend and we were living together in an apartment, and I had the thoughts so bad that I needed to hurt her that I was having a panic attack, and I had to go out. I had to take a very long walk just to clear my mind because I really thought that I had to hurt her. Now, I realized afterward that these were just unwanted thoughts, and there's never any way I would ever act on them or do anything to satisfy these thoughts in my head. When the thoughts come in your head, the best thing you can do is just let them happen. Don't try to fight them. Don't try to think of something else. It's not going to work. If these thoughts are in your head, that's what you're going to think about. Again, if you act on them, that's something different. Or if you think you may act on them, then seek emergency help, because acting on these thoughts is when it becomes a problem. Intrusive thoughts can be other things, of course, than just wanting to hurt people. For the longest time, I was afraid to go on balconies or bridges because I would just have this thought to hurl myself off. Now, at the time, it's important to discuss that at the time I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't particularly depressed. It was just a thought that entered my head. Like, I was like, oh, I'm walking across this bridge. Why don't I just jump off? Or, oh, I'm on this balcony. I could just hurl myself off, and, for no reason at all. This is why these thoughts are particularly disturbing. Now, obviously, I haven't acted on them, and since getting treatment and therapy, these thoughts have become fewer and fewer. I have noticed that when I'm going through a hard time, or when things are particularly difficult or stressful, that's when the intrusive thoughts are more likely to come in my mind. Once you realize that they're just thoughts and there's not anything you need to act on, then of course you'll be fine. If you don't think about it and you just let the thoughts happen, they will go away, I promise. That's what happened to me. Intrusive thoughts can be anything. Again, like I mentioned before, it's just critical to mention that. I mean, you could be going on a bus and you could be like, hey, what if I just knock this fucking drink out of this guy's hand? Or what if I just punch this kid in the face or something? Like, those are just thoughts. They happen to everyone. Now, I've never actually done that, thank goodness, because I didn't act upon those thoughts. Intrusive thoughts happen more than you might think. There's not a whole lot to it. If you find that it's overly disturbing and it happens frequently, then talk to a psychologist, explain what's happening and what's going on, and more than likely they will have a plan for you to maybe get some therapy, maybe some cognitive behavioral therapy, maybe just keeping track of your thoughts and organizing them. But don't worry about it too much unless you think you have to act on them. Don't worry about it because they're normal. You're normal. Whatever normal is, that's just part of being human. That's many times during the day you might not even notice, but thoughts come into your mind and they're all unwanted thoughts. I mean, it's not they might not be to the magnitude that I've discussed, but they are still intrusive thoughts, and they're still thoughts that are disturbing, and you, of course, you don't want to think them, but they do. One of the best ways to get over these intrusive thoughts is to not give in to them. For example, when I said I needed to, I felt like I couldn't hold knives or sharp objects or anything to hurt someone, or because I thought I was afraid that I would hurt someone. Don't give in to that. Don't hide the knives. You know you're not going to do it. It's just in your head. You're just thinking these thoughts. You're never going to act out on it. Intrusive thoughts can be disturbing, especially if you are experiencing them for the first time. And it's not that you're experiencing them for the first time, but it's because you're more cognizant that they're happening. You're more aware that these thoughts are in your head, and you're afraid that you might act upon them. And it's more noticeable, of course, when you're going through some mental issues, if you are depressed or anxious in particular, or anything like that. And this is anything. Like, if you're a mother or a father and you have this thought of like smacking your child or hurting them, or, I mean, of course they're unpleasant, but you're not going to do it, so don't worry about it. This is just your brain processing information. Thoughts are coming into your head, and you might not like them, but as long as you don't act on them, that's what's important. And I stress that over and over again because that's the key. Intrusive thoughts can happen, especially to those who are catastrophic thinkers. I am certainly a catastrophic thinker. Basically what happens, I imagine a scenario, and no matter how simple it is, I turn it into the worst possible scenario imaginable. And sometimes I have this doom scenario where basically if say you're driving your car, or me, I'm driving my car, and I look down, I go to change the radio station, and I take my eyes off the road for one moment, and then I imagine somebody crossing the street at that exact moment in time, and I hit the person and kill them, and then I get charged for distracted driving or unsafe driving or whatever, and then I get sent to jail because I'm convicted of manslaughter and all this. Like, why am I thinking this? It's something that I do every day. Change the station on the radio, the set list or the playlist on the radio, and it's never happened yet. So it's never going to happen unless I'm deliberately careless or take my eyes off the road for a long period of time. But that's just how my brain works, and I'm sure a lot of you can identify with that. You just take a scenario that is pretty normal and you turn it into the worst possible situation you can imagine. I've gotten better over the years at not doing that, or recognizing a situation and just kind of playing the percentages of like, this thing has happened before and nothing's happened. It's got a good track record of nothing major happening, so why is it going to be today that it happens? So the reason I made this video is just to make people out there realize that if you're getting these intrusive thoughts, which is basically everyone, don't worry too much about it because you're not going to act on it. Intrusive thoughts can come in many different forms, harming yourself, harming others, doing things impulsively, like that example about smacking the drink out of somebody's hand or something like that. It's not that there's something wrong with you. You're not crazy, you're not psychotic, you're not an evil person, you're not a bad person. It's just your brain has these thoughts for some reason. It's kind of like the same way your brain has certain dreams. You can't control that. It just happens. And because you have dreams of maybe a violent or unpleasant nature doesn't mean that you're an evil person or you're a mean person or you mean to do mean things or hurt people. Well, I hope this video was helpful. I hope I've reached out to some of you that have these intrusive thoughts. Typically, they do come with depression and anxiety and other mental issues such as that. So if you find yourself imagining things that are terrible or violent, just don't think too much about it and just let the thoughts happen. Just don't act on them. So thanks for watching this video. Please watch my other videos if this one's been helpful. If you find that this video was helpful to you and you want to watch upcoming videos, please click the subscribe button, because the more people who subscribe, the more people I reach out to, because that's just how YouTube is. So thanks again for watching, and always be minding your mental health.